You're listening to the Kelly Green Hour for the Always Next Year Podcast Studio Network. You can find the team on our Twitter at ANY Podcast or visit us on our website, www.alwaysnextyearpodcast.com. And now, to bring us in, the Jackdaws.
A fighting man I used to be, revered and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever fight me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and such over my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son still have me life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Kelly Green Hour here on the Always Next Year podcast. As we were hoping for a victory Green Hour this week, but unfortunately the Philadelphia Eagles fell to the Minnesota Vikings 38-20. We will have plenty to discuss in that game. I'm your host, LJ Harrell. Joining me as always is Connor. Connor, how you doing, my friend?
I am doing great. A little sore today. I just put a fence in my backyard, and I don't know if you've ever done a chain link fence, but yeah.
It's the
I'm a little guy, and all you do is take this big thing of metal and you pound it over top of another thing of metal until it's 4 feet into the ground.
Bro, that's the life of a homeowner, man.
Yeah, apparently so. That's the life I've chosen to lead. So, and I'm very excited to announce that this week we have our first very special guest joining the Kelly Green Hour. Today, she is the wonderful host of the Sports and Stilettos Podcast, which is all about Eagles and Sixers and how much Dallas sucks. And what a great time to say that, because we're heading into Dallas week. She is Breezy. How are you doing, Breezy?
I'm great, Connor. Thank you so much for having me on. This is great. I can't wait to talk about how much Dallas sucks. Honestly, it's the highlight of my life.
Hey, this is a great week to have you on. One thing that if you'll notice about me and Connor, we can talk football all day, every day, and not get tired of that. And I think that you are going to be a perfect fit for us. And I look forward to this show and look forward to future shows that you join us, because I think we are all going to have a lot of fun together, especially if the Eagles can start winning. That'll make things a lot better, obviously.
Oh yeah.
All right, so usually we start with the game, but we're going to hold off a little bit, and I think nobody's going to have issues with that because we lost 38-20. Just breaking news, the Philadelphia Eagles released linebacker Zach Brown. We all know, I think it was Friday of last week, what he said about his former teammate in Kirk Cousins, saying that he was the weak link of the offense of the Minnesota Vikings, and he was talking about when they were in Washington together, how people knew that Kirk Cousins was, if you go at Kirk Cousins, they're going to lose games because he's not mentally tough enough. He's just not a good enough player. Well, Kirk Cousins took that to heart, obviously. He torched the Eagles' really bad secondary, which, I mean, I probably can do that at this point in time. And I'm about to be 32 years old, but that's a different story for a different day. But Zach Brown got released today. I was surprised at the timing. Nigel Bradham got hurt yesterday, probably going to be out for the Dallas game. The linebackers on the roster right now, TJ Edwards, who, Connor, me and you are both very high on him. Mm-hmm. Gamu Grugier-Hill, who's been back from injury for a couple weeks, but hasn't really shined like he did last year. And Nate Gary, and if anybody has ever listened to our shows, they know I cannot stand Nate Gary. He's not a linebacker. He was a safety in college. He doesn't have the skill set, doesn't have I don't think has the athletic ability. Just doesn't do it for me at the linebacker position. This worries me because Zach Brown, while he wasn't having a great season, he was still a body and somebody that, Brandon Graham was on WIP today, and he said he loved playing in front of Zach Brown because he was a thumper. He came through the hole. He was hitting whoever was moving in a different uniform. How surprised were you guys at this release? And could it mean a move, whether it's a free agent signing, which I looked, Brandon Marshall's out there, but other than that, I'm not impressed with any of the free agents out there, or could Howie be in the process of making a move for a linebacker, a corner, a lineman, a receiver, anything? What are your guys' thoughts? We'll start with you, Breezy.
Well, I agree with you. I was very, very surprised at the timing. I was not expecting Zach Brown to be released or anything. I thought we were going to go into Dallas week and it'd be smooth sailing after that. But it caught me off guard, like you said, because Nigel Bradham got hurt yesterday. He left the stadium in a boot. That's definitely not a good sign. And there's no depth. Like, we have, what, 4 linebackers? Like, the last thing that we need is somebody else to get hurt and not have anybody to replace them. So I'm hoping and praying that Howie has made some phone calls or he's on the phone right now. I actually was tweeting someone else earlier today and just hashtag like team no sleep, because you don't know what's going to happen in the middle of the night.
Very
Howie
true.
could sign anyone under the sun at this point, because we need so much help on that defense that, you know, we could wake up tomorrow and we could have Patrick Peterson in Philadelphia. You know,
Hey,
like
he just got out of his suspension too, and the Eagles have been trying to get Patrick Peterson for years. When they traded Kevin Cobb to the Arizona Cardinals, what was that, 8, 9, 10 years ago?
Yeah.
At this point, they were going to trade him for the number 4, I think it was the number 4 overall pick, whatever pick that they took Patrick Peterson. But the only reason they didn't is because there was if I'm not mistaken, that was the year that there was I don't want to call it a strike, but there was work stoppage. And so they were able to make a trade. They did a player for a player because they got Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, but they weren't able to do a player for a draft pick because they were going to do the draft pick and they were going to draft Patrick Peterson, which I would have loved, obviously. And we wouldn't be having this conversation now about how poor our secondary is. Connor, what were your thoughts on it?
I mean, well, you saw what I messaged instantly in our group. I said, what about if it's a 2 players coming our way, packaged with a bunch of draft picks leaving our team? And I said Emmanuel Sanders and Chris Harris.
That doesn't help the linebacker position.
But then like, you know, like super hopeful and super excited me said, what about Von Miller and Chris Harris, or Von Miller and Emmanuel Sanders? I mean, maybe he's trying to put together something like that. But like you said, free agency for linebackers is super thin and no better than Zach Brown. So, I mean, and it's instantly, as soon as that release happened, Adam Schefter reported multiple teams showing interest right away. So why we moved on from him, just because he's struggling a bit this year. Maybe it's just not the right defensive fit for him with the scheme that we run. But at the end of the day, I mean, we needed him, especially if Bradham is not playing this week.
Yeah, and I really do think it had a lot to do with what he was saying last week about Kirk Cousins, and it put a bullseye. It was bulletin board material, and this is a locker room that really doesn't like to talk and provide bulletin board material. I mean, granted, Doug Peterson did it today, saying they're going to Dallas, they're going to win, they'll be in first place in the NFC. So it's kind of a double standard there. But let me ask you guys, if you're going to make a trade, I think we need a cornerback more than anything. But is there a possibility that we go for a wide receiver? Because A, we don't know when Deshaun's coming back, and B, this offense struggles without a deep threat. They need somebody that can stretch the field to open up other parts of the field for Zach Ertz, for Dallas Goedert, for Nelson Aguilar in the middle from the slot. You know, what is your guys' preference in terms of moves that the Eagles can make before the trade deadline? You can go, Brees.
Okay. So if the Eagles signed a wide receiver, I would be very surprised. I don't think that the offense needs a wide receiver. I think that we are, while the offense struggles to score points early, I think we have the people that we need. I don't think we need to bring in another wide receiver. Deshaun Jackson could be back Sunday night. It's a toss-up. I heard a rumor that he needed surgery, and that'll put him out another 3 or 4 weeks. So I'm hoping that that's not the case. But, you know, I think our wide receivers just need to concentrate and catch the damn ball. Like, let's be honest here. Everybody had butterfingers.
Yep.
So I don't think the struggle is really on the offensive side with the players. I think it's more so on the defensive side in that secondary. We need a cornerback bad.
100% agreed.
Yeah,
Connor?
I couldn't agree more. I think that that what needs to be addressed is on the defensive side of the ball, and what needs to be addressed on the offensive side of the ball is not personnel related, like you said, Breezy, but it has everything to do with Doug Peterson and being the ballsy play call, and not the end of the first half ballsy play call we saw on Sunday play caller, but the one that took us to the Super Bowl ballsy Doug Peterson play caller back, because
Philly.
all he's doing, I mean, how many times do we have to see Alshon Jeffrey catch a goddamn screen pass?
Yeah, he's not built for that anymore.
No, it's just,
that offense is not built for that anymore.
Yeah.
No, exactly.
It's really bad when your biggest threat to catch a ball downfield is your rookie running back, who he just goes out on wheel routes and he's catching. The last 4 weeks, the last 5 weeks since Deshaun has been out, the top 4 pass catching yard, the 4 longest passes that Carson Wentz has completed have been to Miles Sanders. That's not a good sign.
Who was also a leading wide receiver or a leading receiver in Sunday's game.
Exactly.
Ridiculous.
That's not the way this offense was built. And my thing is, this goes back to Howie. We've applauded Howie, how he's built this team. My one downfall for Howie is, if this offense is predicated on having a speed receiver on the outside that can stretch the field, why did you not have somebody to back up Deshaun Jackson? Everybody knew that Deshaun was going to get hurt and probably miss 3 or 4 games this year. The same thing happened last year with Mike Wallace. When Mike Wallace broke his foot and he was out, there was nobody else that backed him up. So if this offense is going to be predicated on having the deep threat and being able to just have Carson throw the ball down the field once or twice a game just to have the defense buy it, believe it, so they keep a safety deep, why was there not a backup receiver? They drafted J-Jaw. We all thought J-Jaw was going to be great. Terry McLaurin went in the 3rd round. What is he doing with Washington? He leads all rookie receivers in receiving because, A, he's a great route runner. B, he's a speed demon. And Washington, the Redskins, with Case Keenum at quarterback, are getting everything out of him that the Philadelphia Eagles could use right now.
Absolutely. I mean, I was all for the J-Jaw pick, but then when you looked at the needs, it's like J-Jaw is literally Alshon Jeffrey minus like 7 years. It made absolutely 0 sense after the fact, although his highlight reel package looked beautiful, but that was it.
Yeah, I mean, he looked obviously played the part in Stanford. It's a totally different thing when you're in the NFL. All right, so let's jump to this game that we all did not enjoy on Sunday, where they in Minnesota. Obviously, it was the building in which the Philadelphia Eagles won their first Super Bowl 2 years ago. It was a great time to be a Philadelphia Eagles fan, but yesterday was not. The Eagles fell down 24-3. The Eagles, in 5 of their first 6 games, have been down 10+ points in every game. Breezy, what do you think is the reason for this? Why can't Doug Peterson get this offense going from the get-go and wait instead of waiting till these second half adjustments that he's been really good at making?
I think it really comes down to, so in the Super Bowl year, Doug Peterson was preaching, winning game starts at practice during the week. Mm-hmm. Something is not going right at practice. And you see it on Sundays when they play the games. Nobody is ready. Nobody is, it feels like nobody knew that they even had a game to come to until the second half. It
seems like that a lot. Ready? Two words for you. Frank Reich.
Oh, he's missed tremendously. And I thought it was only last year where, we were missing him because Carson Wentz was struggling a little bit. I'm sorry, guys. That's my daughter in the background.
It's fine.
But, you see it now. And Carson Wentz is fully healthy. There's nothing wrong with him. And he's still not getting it. And I don't know if it's...
I don't blame Carson. Carson is the reason why this team is 3-3. He's the reason why the offense actually moves. You saw on his touchdown pass to Alshon yesterday, he stepped up in the pocket, maneuvered right, threw a pump fake, got a defender up, was able to gave enough time for Alshon to get open in the middle of the end zone and threw the touchdown. We saw it last week against the Jets when he ducked under Quinnen Williams, who came in and then threw a strike on 3rd and 17, I think it was, to Zach Ertz. Not many quarterbacks can do that. He is doing a lot of this on his own. Like, he needs help. Carson Wentz is furthest down the line for me in terms of the issues with this Philadelphia Eagles offense and team.
Right. But as the commander of the offense, you have to get the people around you to step up. If nobody else is stepping up to the level that you're at, then at some point that some of that blame, it falls on Carson, whether it's inadvertently or directly. It'll fall on him because he's the quarterback.
Yeah, I get that, because the quarterback position is the most important position in all of sports, and then followed the goalie would probably be second. But when Carson in that Atlanta game, Carson put a perfect pass on Nelson Aguilar. If he catches that ball, he walks into the end zone, the Eagles win that game. Right. I don't think that was Carson's fault. In the Detroit game, Carson hit Nelson Aguilar. Without being touched, he fumbles the ball. J-Jaw on that last 4th down play had the ball hit him right in the hands. He drops it. Like, Carson is doing everything he can. And I get what you're saying.
Except throwing it to himself.
Well, yeah, that's true. Patrick Mahomes did that in a playoff game. So
exactly.
Or no, Marcus Mariota, did that in a playoff game. So I would not be shocked if he started doing that soon, because until Deshaun comes back, and you can only throw so many of them dumb ass screens to Alshon before the defense reads it, which when you throw 5 of them in a game, obviously the defense is going to know it's coming. And that play bothers me so much. I can't stand it. And you're right. When Doug Peterson in that Super Bowl season was creative. Now, again, I mentioned Frank Reich, John DeFilippo. I really think that we see what Frank Reich is doing with Indianapolis. Their offense is fun to watch with Jacoby Brissett. Like,
right.
He meant a lot to this offense, and it's something that Doug, he's missing. And I think that's the missing link. I mentioned it last year, and people were like, "Oh, you're reading too much into it." He didn't mean that much, but we're seeing it. There's no creativity to this offense right now.
No, there absolutely is not. There's zero creativity. It's like his playbook. He looks at this piece of paper in front of him, and you're like, holy shit, look at all those plays that he has to play with. And you see essentially about 10 plays run multiple times in a game. And you clearly can see a few of his favorites. He loves to send Sanders out there on a sweep and lose yardage, and he loves to throw that Jeffrey screen, or once in a while he threw in the Aguilar screen, just to mix it up.
Actually works because he somewhat has some speed.
Absolutely, but at the end of the day, like, we talk about it every single week. You cannot fall behind. You cannot fall behind. You cannot fall behind, and he just continues to fall behind. They can't seem to figure it out. They can't seem to get their game going whatsoever. And it's really sad to watch us have to try and dig out of that hole every single week, because then everybody starts to shift the blame to Jim Schwartz. Why can't Jim Schwartz stop anything? Is his defense perfect? Absolutely not. And I will not defend that defense is perfect, but they gave them 2 chances in like 4 minutes to end the first half, and all we got was the ugliest attempt at a trick play in years that I've seen.
That was bad. That was bad.
Extremely. So, at the end of the day, people want to then throw Jim Schwartz under the bus. Jim Schwartz can only give you so many chances with the ball. And if you get 2 chances in less than 4 minutes before the half, and then you're getting the ball after the half, you got to put points up at that time. You got to put points up to end that first half, because that's a gift. That was wrapped up, put under the Christmas tree, and then just set on fire by Doug Peterson and his offense.
Yeah, if they would have kicked that field goal at the end of the first half, could have given them momentum because they got the ball to start the second half. So things would have been different. Instead of being 24-20, it would have been 24-23 at one point, and things definitely could have changed. I want to go to the defense. I'm glad you brought up the defense, Connor. The secondary. We've already talked about them a lot, but there is something wrong with Sidney Jones, and I'm not talking health. In between the ears, he has an issue. He doesn't trust his abilities. He doesn't trust that he can stay healthy. When Adam Thielen is able to pull a double move when you're at the 6-yard line, what are you biting on? The end zone is right there. Just stay. You don't have to come up. And Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs are really, really good route runners. But when you're inside the 10-yard line, if you're biting, you shouldn't be on a football field. I don't care what anybody says. And I was a big proponent of the Sidney Jones the drafting of Sidney Jones 2 years ago. Yeah, I knew he had torn his Achilles, and I thought he was really good at UW, but he doesn't have it. And I think we're at the point where he needs a change of scenery. I don't think he's going to be able to succeed in Philly. And if you're able to package him with some draft picks for another corner, for a Chris Harris, for that slim chances at a Jalen Ramsey, for somebody who's better than what we have on this roster, you have to do it. Let him try to become a spark somewhere else. If he becomes a spark somewhere else, good for him. But you have to live with that because I don't think he's ever going to have it in Philadelphia. Connor, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that the extremely sad reality of this whole situation is when Eagles fans are comparing Sidney Jones to Markelle Fultz, the biggest train wreck of the Philadelphia 76ers. Well, there you go. All the more. Maybe there's something about those Washington guys. But then you go and look in Green Bay where I think it's Kevin King, who's completely killing it, and he went to that same college.
Buddy Murphy, who's with the Arizona Cardinals, also went there. We got the wrong one.
We clearly did. But I mean, I think your point. I mean, if we got fans comparing Fultz and Jones, Jones's time may very well be up. He got benched at one point. If it was even for just that one possession that he got benched for James, who ended up going and giving up a touchdown anyways, that Sidney Jones probably would have given up on the flip side. So, I mean, is his time up? Maybe. Is there a move to be made? Most likely. Is it a move on the Philadelphia Eagles football field? I just don't know. I just don't think that you can move him anywhere in that secondary where he will succeed. I don't think he's got the size to be a safety, and I don't think moving him, we've seen him in the slot. He can't really do that either. He can't. I just don't know what he can do for this team. And I mean, when we're in need of big time cornerbacks and we're seeing those types of games from a guy like Sidney Jones, I think the timing just is there. The writing's on the wall.
Connor, me and you talked about it a couple weeks ago, how this stretch that the Eagles are on, this gauntlet of 6 games against really good teams, starting with the Vikings. They have Dallas this week, then the Bills, all on the road, and then they host the Bears, then they get a bye, then they host the Patriots and the Seahawks. We talked about how there's going to be some really good quarterbacks and really good receivers, and the Eagles defense is going to have, and we can even include the Green Bay game in this, and it's somehow, some way they went on the road on a short week and won that game. But we talked about how the defense was going to have to find a way to make plays to help the offense. Now I have to change that. The offense is going to have to win games. If it's going to have to be shootouts. Breezy, let me ask you something. Mm-hmm. What would you package for a Chris Harris if, the Jacksonville Jaguars were willing to finally say, look, we're going to give up. Jalen Ramsey hasn't played for 3 weeks. He's never missed a game in his life, in college, in the pros, and now he's got quote unquote injuries because he wants out of Jacksonville. What would your package look like if you were Howie Roseman and you were going to make an offer for a cornerback who could come in here, be a number one, can shut down half the field, and then you could figure it out on the other side of the defense?
Well, in my perfect world, I would give up the farm for Jalen Ramsey. I don't care. Agree. I'm with you. Anything Jacksonville wants, I would give it. Minus
Carson Wentz. I'm not giving up Carson Wentz.
Yeah, minus Carson Wentz. Anybody else on that field, you can have them.
Well, I proposed.
That's my perfect world.
So I proposed on Twitter yesterday.
Oh, goodness.
Zach Ertz for Jalen Ramsey. Do you do it? Because I think Dallas Goedert is going to be better than Zach Ertz.
See, I love Zach Ertz. But
a lot of people love him.
I do agree with you that Dallas Goedert might be better only because of yak yardage. Zach Ertz does not get – he could not break a tackle if it broke in front of him. Like, he's bad at it, and he's always been bad at it. But Dallas Goedert reminds me so much of Brent Selleck, and that's why I like him. I'm a huge Brent Selleck fan. So taking the emotion out of it and just looking strictly at stats and things like that, yeah, half of me would give up Zach Ertz
And I think
for
that
Jalen Ramsey.
Because I think that will work. The Jacksonville Jaguars do not have a tight end. We know Zach Ertz and Nick Foles did really well together, even though I think Nick Foles has lost his starting job in Jacksonville because they're going to probably unless Gardner Minshew over the next 4 or 5 weeks absolutely craps the bed. I think that Nick Foles has lost his starting job with the Jaguars. But, if you proposed, if you gave up Zach Ertz, it helps that you still have Dallas Goedert, and B, I don't think you'd have to throw a first round pick in there because Zach Ertz is the second best tight end in football. He's definitely a top 3. It's him, George Kittle, and Travis Kelce. I think, if you're Howie, and Zach Ertz has not been good this year. If we're being honest, he fumbled yesterday. That's very unlike him. He just dropped too many balls, and we know. And as you mentioned, Breezy, he does not break any tackles. Like, if you blew on him or if you looked at him, he's falling. That's how bad it is. It's so frustrating watching him. And that's why in that Atlanta game, when they threw him the ball on 4th and 10 and they threw it at the 9.5 yard mark, who in their right mind would have thought he was going to break a tackle? Like,
I know I didn't.
It made 0 sense to me. I was really mad at that. But if I'm the Eagles, I am the way your defense is, you have a chance to do something special. You have a chance to win the division. You win the division, you get a home playoff game, but the defense and the secondary is what's going to keep you from doing that. You have to pull out all the stops to improve this secondary. And if it means trading Zach Ertz, a Super Bowl hero, somebody who loves this city, and somebody who's been great and is going to go down as a Hall of Fame tight end, you have to strongly consider it.
I think if we're being completely realistic, I honestly don't think the Jaguars pull the trigger even on that. There's been some crazy packages rumored out there. And if we think that Zach Ertz, who we're trading for the number 1 tight end or cornerback, shut down cornerback in the league, and you're telling me you're going to give a top 3 tight end, but he's kind of fringing out of there because he's having an off season. If you think that package 1-for-1 is going to work, I would probably. But I mean, you got to draw the line. Like, how far do you really want to go? You want to give up a Hall of Fame tight end
or a Hall of Fame cornerback?
For what? A Hall of Fame cornerback who you have to feed the money as well, and there's no guarantees he will stay or that money will be it.
He would stay.
He would stay.
You guys might be the only one. Well, I guess I might be the only one who doesn't. I might be the only one who doesn't believe that if you get that commitment.
Well, this
okay,
is the deal.
I pull the trigger on that deal if you get the commitment that he signs a deal. If he's coming over and he has no deal in place, you don't do it. You can't do it.
For a trade of this magnitude, you don't make it unless you have a deal in place. Like, you don't go in there. You don't pull what Dallas did with Amari Cooper last year and hoping that they're able to re-sign him, which I don't think they will. I think he's walking after this year. You don't go and trade a tight end like Zach Ertz caliber and possibly a 1st or 2nd round pick without that guarantee that he is going to sign. The Eagles have the cap money. Peters is coming off the cap. Sproles is coming off the cap. Jenkins and or McLeod could come off the cap. Like, you are going to have more than enough space. Plus, the cap always goes up. I have no issues with Howie offering a 24-year-old who's the best corner in the game, who's on a Hall of Fame track, the top cornerback money in the league. I have no issues with that.
Fair. I guess I agree. It's fair.
Here, ready? I'm gonna imagine Jalen Ramsey covering Stephon Diggs yesterday. Does he have 3 touchdowns and 160 some odd yards that he had yesterday?
Absolutely not. But let's be realistic here. Rasul Douglas is not a speed cornerback. He is not a shutdown cornerback. He plays it tough at the line. But Diggs is not someone that Douglas can play tough at the line against. like that, because as soon as he plays tough at the line and he has to let go because the 5 yards have passed, he's getting by him. We saw him against Terry McLaurin.
Would you consider DeAndre Hopkins the best cornerback or best wide receiver in football?
Would I consider him the best wide receiver?
One of the best wide receivers in football?
Oh,
Yes.
definitely one of the best.
Do you know what Jalen Ramsey did to him in their game earlier this year?
He hasn't been right since. So that's why it's tough to say if he's a top wide receiver right now, because Jalen Ramsey broke him.
Jalen Ramsey breaks a lot of receivers. You see, look, this is my thing. People say one corner won't do it. If you get a Jalen Ramsey and you put him on a Stephon Diggs, you can put Rasul Douglas. You can put Rasul Douglas on Adam Thielen.
He was doing fine when it was that way. When Douglas was on Thielen, he was fine. As soon as he got shifted to Diggs.
You're making my point for me right now, because then if he needed help, you don't need to help Jalen Ramsey. He shuts down that half of the field. He shuts down that receiver. You can help put a corner or put a safety over top of the other side. You can double team on that side, and then you can do different creative things up front, whether it's blitzing linebackers, whether it's bringing a safety down the blitz. You can do a bunch of different things when you have the talent of Jalen Ramsey. And I'm going to ring this Jalen Ramsey bell until it's past the trade deadline or until he gets traded elsewhere, because it's got to happen. Howie Roseman has to make this move, because if he doesn't, the Eagles are going to waste a pretty good season by Carson Wentz, and his team is going to go one and done in the playoffs.
Listen, I mean, I don't deny the importance to pick him up, but the fact that there was a report that came out today that the Eagles make weekly calls to the Jags shows how desperate they are, and shows that the Jaguars know that they will get more from us than probably any other team in the NFL to make this deal happen. We will end up selling the farm for Jalen Ramsey, and then wait for it, people will bitch about it 3 or 4 years down the road when we lost Zach Ertz and Ertz goes and blows up in Jacksonville, when we traded away 1 or 2 first-round draft picks and those turn into this guy and this guy who turned into top and talents.
How have the Eagles drafted the last couple years? Their drafts have been really bad.
They have, yeah.
So I'd much rather who are you going to, if you trade a first round pick for Jalen Ramsey, say that pick is number 25, are you going to draft somebody at number 25 in next year's draft that's going to be as good as Jalen Ramsey for the next 5 years?
Well, how about we do it like this? Let's do what Ian Rappaport said. If you're going to give up X, Y, and Z draft picks, are you comfortable with the last 2 first round picks you traded not being on your team? So if you look back 2 years, would you be comfortable with Andre Dillard and whoever we drafted the year before that? I'm all flustered now. I can't remember who we drafted 2 years ago. Derek Barnett? Yeah, Derek Barnett. Would you be comfortable with Derek Barnett and Andre Dillard
I don't like Derek Barnett right now.
On this team?
Yes, I don't like Derek Barnett right now. He's not as good as everybody claims to be. And
you hate on Barnett. Breezy, what do you think?
Coming out of college, I love Derek Barnett. I thought he did good. I thought he was disruptive his very first year. Then he got hurt and all that jazz. And, throughout the first, 5 or 6 games or 5 games of this year, he's been penalized for late hits, unnecessary roughness, like stuff like that. His head is not in the game right now. And it shows. And it sucks, because now we're losing talent on the outside when we need it on the outside. So I don't know. Derek Barnett, he's real iffy. He's been on my soapbox 1 or 2 times already. So I'm not a huge fan of him at the very moment.
What about Andre Dillard? Would now package them?
Knowing that Jason Peters is off your books and probably not an Eagle after this year.
Okay, so
yes,
thinking about that, if Andre Dillard got first team reps every week, I would not want him off of this team. But he's not getting first team reps every week. Even though everybody knows Jason Peters doesn't finish games. He hasn't finished a game in 2 or 3 years now.
I think last year he finished. He played 100% of the snaps, I think, in 3 of the 16 games.
Yeah. So it's more likely than not that Jason Peters is not going to finish a game. So having someone of Andre Dillard's talent level backing him up, I feel better with that than having Big V in there.
He did win a Super Bowl with Big V, though. Just saying.
Yeah, but see, that Super Bowl year, Big V knew he was starting. If you look back at the games where he was just stepping in versus him actually starting, he was getting blown up left and right.
Mm-hmm.
And the same with Andre Dillard. Andre Dillard got blown up on a few plays yesterday.
Oh, yes, he did. But Everson Griffin is really good.
Yeah, that's a tough line to play. You're throwing a rookie in against Everson Griffin. Like, that's no easy task.
Connor, to answer your question, because Jalen Ramsey is 24, you can get 7 Hall of Fame caliber years from him, and it improves your defense because what wins championships? Defense wins championships. You put him on the outside. You have Fletcher Cox anchoring, a healthy Fletcher Cox, we're going to assume, anchoring the defensive front for the Eagles. Yes, you do it. You get a healthy Avonte Maddox coming back.
We miss him. Goodness.
They really do miss him.
Mm-hmm.
You blame Andrew Sendejo, who's a heat-seeking missile for anything. Doesn't matter what color jersey you're wearing.
But on the bright side, Darby and Mills are back this week potentially.
Dude, Mills, it's so sad that we're clamoring for Jalen Mills to come back.
I am not clamoring for Jalen Mills to come back.
I am
because
you see what we have out there.
The secondary needs his attitude out there. They need the attitude. That's what they're missing. Jones and Douglas are getting ran over left and right, and they're not showing no kind of emotion out on the field. Jalen Mills shows that emotion every single play, whether he gets beat on a play or not.
I hate that finger wag, but he still has attitude.
I hate it too, but you know what? It's what that secondary needs.
Agreed.
Especially, I think he would really help Rasul Douglas because last year we saw Douglas. We saw when Jalen Mills was out on the field. I don't deny we need Mills' attitude. I just don't think we need him playing 10 yards off and shaking his finger at a guy who the ball was thrown 2 feet over his head. I just don't think sure, we need that attitude, but we don't need that play. We have that play from the guys who are out there on the secondary anyways. But I do think his attitude will absolutely help, like Douglas, because last year we saw Douglas when he had an attitude. And now imagine Douglas with that attitude fighting the first 5 yards with a cornerback on the line. It's just going to be even more ferocious.
I'm still of the opinion that Rasul Douglas is a safety. He doesn't have the speed. He can hit. He's got great ability with the ball in the air, but he doesn't have the speed to be a corner. They really should transition him to be a safety because I think one of Jenkins and McLeod will be back next year. I don't think both will be back. And I still think they make a move to improve the cornerback position. So if they make a move to improve cornerback, you move Rasul Douglas back to safety. You have Avonte Maddox in the slot. So then you can have Jalen Mills and whatever other corner you have on the outside. That makes this defense better for the long term. That's just my fault.
I got to admit, we have done a hell of a job at avoiding the topic of the Vikings completely killing us on Sunday.
Good, because that game sucked. All right, so now that we avoided that, since we have Breezy with us, let's talk about Connor. I know later in the week, me and you are going to get into Dallas Week Heavy, talking Eagles Dallas. Let's talk about this game coming up briefly. What is key for the Eagles this week to come away with the victory? What do they have to do? Think about everything. Amari Cooper's injured, might not play. Lyle Collins and Tyron Smith might not play for Dallas. They're injury riddled too. We could have Mills and Darby come back. We know what happened at the linebacker position. Deshaun, iffy, who knows? What is key? We'll start with you, Breezy. What is key for the Philadelphia Eagles to beat Dallas for the first time in 2 years and to take over sole possession of first place in the NFC East?
I think when you look back at all of these games, I think the biggest key is to start fast.
Agreed.
I really loved the 2017 first 15 scripted plays and how they were just high tempo, fast. It kept the defense honest. That's what I need to happen next week. And I feel like, based on what Doug Peterson was saying earlier, how he said they were going to go into Dallas, they were going to win, and that was it. I feel like he's probably getting into that kind of groove again. And that's what I want to see. I think that is the biggest key to really winning. It's going to be an offensive game. There's no doubt that the defense is going to turn it up, but the offense has to score points. There's no way this Eagles team is going to beat Dallas if they do not score points on offense.
I'm with you. This has to be a Doug Peterson, Carson Wentz game. And if you can jump out to a quick lead, we saw what happened to Dallas in Jersey yesterday against the Jets when Mr. Clapp, Jason Garrett, was trying to slap hands or whatever with his team. They walked
and nobody was
there
on the net.
There is turmoil in Dallas. As much as as much as I want Jerry Jones to give Jason Garrett a 300-year contract and never let him leave because they'll never win with him as head coach, he's like on a short lease. If the Eagles can win this game this week by 4 touchdowns, which I don't think is going to happen, but let's hypothetically, there's a chance that Jason Garrett gets fired. That's how big this game is for both teams. For the Eagles, they can lose this game, but still have a path to winning the division. If Dallas loses this game, this is 4 consecutive losses for Dallas with a team in turmoil. It's huge, and it's huge I think it's a bigger game for Dallas than it is for the Eagles. Would you agree, Connor?
Oh, yeah, I would definitely agree. I mean, we've heard about the rumors of Jason Garrett. Is he on the hot seat? Is he not on the hot seat?
This seat's boiling.
For 2 years now, because the guy cannot win when it matters. And he showed that not only can he not win against good teams in the NFL, he can't even beat the bad teams in the NFL right now anymore. It's painful. If I was a Cowboys fan, and I know a couple of them up here in Canada who are just hating their lives right now, even though they're 3-3. The division's still within reach for both of us, but I think this, like you said, this is a big week. This game we could look back on. I feel like we say this every week, but this could be one of those games we really look back on at the end of the year and say, whoever won this or lost this, that's why they made it or didn't make it into the playoffs. So I think it is a vitally important game. And week over week, we continue to say the same thing. This has to be a Doug Peterson game. Last week, you said it had to be Doug Peterson beating Mike Zimmer. Mike Zimmer beat Doug Peterson. And that is one of the big reasons why we lost that game. And, this week, Doug Peterson can beat Jason Garrett. This is an easy beat, coach on coach. And especially if he doesn't have Amari Cooper, because if you look at Dak Prescott's last few games without Amari Cooper, they're not that good. When you look at Dak Prescott without Cooper or without Elliott, his games are not good. He is not a good quarterback. He is an average at best quarterback. And Jason Garrett is I don't even want to call him an average coach. He is a terrible coach.
I definitely agree with you. He is awful. One thing, the Eagles have not beat Dallas when Zeke Elliott has played. Now, we know the Eagles going into this week, they were the number 1 rush defense, and they did a pretty good job against Dalvin Cook on Sunday. Madison, on the other hand, he had a couple of good plays. But it's important that the Eagles continue to keep their assignments, especially that front 4, to stop Zeke. Because if Zeke gets going, that changes things for that Dallas offense. Let's be real. He makes the Dallas offense go. And you can set up play action, which gets Dak Prescott outside the pocket, and he can start moving around. And if Amari Cooper's playing, I don't know if Randall Cobb's going to play, but if he's playing, they can exploit our secondary, because as we've been talking about this entire 45 minutes, this secondary is a hot mess right now. And we saw in that game in Dallas last year, Dak Prescott, I think, had over 400 yards passing.
Yeah.
And he was in the middle of a streak where he couldn't even get 200 yards passing. So it's important that they have to get pressure on him. You get pressure on him, you start hitting him, and boy genius Kellen Moore won't know what to do calling plays against this Eagles defense.
No, absolutely not. It's I just can't get over how important this game is so early on in the season, that we have to be so on edge for this game this week against Dallas. We want to be hyped up because it's Dallas week and we're like, yeah, we're going to beat Dallas. But there's a part of me that feels like it gives me knots in my stomach to think about the importance of this game. And I think like a lot of people just don't realize how vitally important this game will be for both teams, because Doug Peterson cannot fall flat on his face for, like, I would argue that for the 7th week in a row, because we should have beat the Jets. We did beat the Jets, and we should have beat them by a lot, and we did beat them by a lot. But in the rest of the games, Doug Peterson has not looked like the Doug Peterson that we have praised so much over the years. The Doug Peterson that brought us a Super Bowl. We talked about it last week. The Doug Peterson with Nick Foles and the Doug Peterson with Carson Wentz, two completely different coaches, it feels like.
And it bothers me a lot that happens. Like he calls more aggressive games with Nick Foles, but then with Carson Wentz, he wants to get conservative. I said it yesterday. Carson Wentz is better outside the pocket. They need to stop trying to make him a pocket quarterback. We saw when he was able to extend the plays and get outside the pocket against the Vikings, he made plays. He threw a touchdown pass to Alshon. He was able to pick up he picked up a 3rd and long where he hit Alshon. Like, they need to let him move around. Stop making him or forcing him to be a pocket quarterback, because that's not him. What do you think, Breezy?
I agree. Carson Wentz has never been a pocket quarterback. Like, let's be honest. His biggest advantage over a lot of these defenses is the fact that he uses his legs, the fact that he can extend plays and keep these drives going. So trying to minimize that is only detrimental to the way that he plays. So now he's, I don't want to say he's gun shy just because of his injuries, but it's almost like Doug Peterson is making him play like he's gun shy. He doesn't want to get hurt, so he has to stay in the pocket. He doesn't want to extend plays because he doesn't want to get hit hard. Like that's psychologically damaging to a quarterback who, like you said, is best outside of the pocket.
I agree with you there. Like, I mean, Tom Brady, a lot of quarterbacks get injured in the pocket too. Tom Brady tore his ACL in the pocket.
Right.
So that the ACL injury that Carson suffered 2 years ago, that was a fluke thing, scoring a touchdown. Like, let's be real. That was, how many times is he going to get hit in that exact spot as he's diving in for a touchdown? It doesn't happen. That was a fluke thing. Most of his injuries are fluke things. As Ike Reese likes to say, let the Bronco buck. Let him do.
I love him.
I love when Ike Reese gets on his tangents about Carson Wentz. They're the best. And I 100% agree with him. Let him do what he does. He is I mentioned it earlier in the segment. If it wasn't for Carson Wentz, we're a 1-5 football team right now. We're not 3-3. He has won us games that any other quarterback in the league, well, not Patrick Mahomes, obviously, probably not Tom Brady, but most other quarterbacks in the league are losing. And he's putting us in position to win games. So they have to find a way to help him out. Like, the game against the Vikings was the most angry I've ever seen Carson Wentz. He was frustrated, and I don't blame him one bit. He needs help. Obviously, the quarterback position, you mentioned it earlier, Breezy. The quarterback position, everything falls on him, but he can't do it by himself all the time. They have to help him out.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, that frustration that was coming out it hurt me. I felt it. When he slammed that helmet down, I felt like I was slamming a helmet down, and I've never held a football helmet in my life. So that just goes to show how painful that was.
Connor, if you make your way down south, I have a football helmet you can slam for, because I have mine, and I think I retired, so you can slam my football helmet. All right. I'm so glad that we avoided the talking about that Vikings game as much as possible, because I really didn't want to talk about it. I'm not gonna lie.
Me either.
I'm glad we were able to get around that. It was great having you on, Breezy. You're definitely gonna have to come on more. I hope you enjoyed yourself. It was a lot of fun.
I did.
Where can the Kelly Green Hour fans reach you on Twitter? Listen to your podcast. To get to know you, and I mean, we're gonna have you on multiple times. I don't if you're willing to come on with us. I mean, we'll have you on.
Absolutely.
I feel like we'll talk football all day, especially if the Eagles can make a run into the playoffs. Where can the Kelly Green Hour and any Always Next Year podcast fans reach you?
On Twitter, you can reach me at yourhost_breezy. You can also follow me on Instagram at Sports and Stilettos Podcast. The show is available on most podcasting platforms: Apple, Google, Spotify, Anchor, Pocket Cast, Breaker, and Radio Public. So you can find it pretty much anywhere.
That's awesome. We appreciate you coming on. This was definitely a great way for us all to clear our minds after that hell that we watched Sunday.
Yeah, I gotta admit, this kind of felt like a victory green hour because we literally talked about how at night we go to bed thinking about Jalen Ramsey for like half an hour. Like we had to do it. It had to be done. We could have talked about who was the player of the game in a complete slop fest, or we could have talked
Let's
about.
Be real. We would all said Stephon Diggs. He killed the like.
Stop it. I would have. You know what? I had it written down Fletcher Cox because I think he was monumental.
He was good, but really.
I think when you look at the Eagles and what Dalvin Cook wasn't able to accomplish, where did Madison go to get all those yardage? Not towards Fletcher Cox, I'll tell you that.
I agree.
Look, he was the best player for the Eagles, but it'd be hard to give player of that game to an Eagle. I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, we are an Eagles podcast, so
I get that.
Gotta
being
throw
realistic.
If you turn a blind eye to the
with Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, I'm turning a blind eye to Stephon Diggs. I'm turning my shoulder to Diggs exactly like Jones and Douglas did.
I mentioned this to Connor. I mentioned it to Shane yesterday when we were watching the game. I said, you know what's going to suck? If Stephon Diggs gets traded to the Patriots and we see him in like 3 weeks and he does it to us again. Because there's a slim chance that could happen.
No.
Oh, God.
Like,
no.
Say it.
I know. I don't want to say it, but like I'm thinking if he still wants out of Minnesota in the next 3 weeks, we know Bill Belichick will give up a 7th round pick somehow and get him because that's what he does. But let's be real. Let's hope it doesn't happen. But I really hope we don't see him, in Philly in a couple weeks with Tom Brady at quarterback because we saw what he did with freaking Kirk Cousins at quarterback. All right. So before we finish off, this segment was brought to you by Just Food Catering. You can go to 4920 York Road in Doylestown, PA, or give them a call at 215-794-3663. Go visit our friend Rob. Get some breakfast food. Get some food for the Eagles game this Sunday night against the Dallas Cowboys. And we thank them for being a sponsor to the Always Next Year podcast. Connor, where can people reach you at on Twitter, my friend?
You guys can find me at Connor10. I'm always, and that's TEN. I'm always extremely active. So give me a follow and I'll follow back.
And I can be reached at LJ Harrell 54. That's LJ Harrell 54. And you can always reach the Always Next Year podcast Twitter at ANY Podcast. Give us a follow, rate and review the show. Let us know how we did. Let us know how Breezy did because I think she did a great job.
Yes, please.
We appreciate her being the first guest on the Kelly Green Hour, and we hope that she comes on many more times, and we will have plenty more guests as we get through this season. And then when we get into the off season, which we hope doesn't start until after February, I think it's February 2nd, February 3rd, one of those dates, whenever the Super Bowl is in Miami, as the Eagles take 2 trips to Miami this year, one December 1st, the other for Super Bowl 54. I know I'm being a little optimistic here.
Very optimistic.
But I can hope. For Breezy, for Connor, I'm your host, LJ. Thank you for listening to the Kelly Green Hour here on the Always Next Year podcast.
A fighting man I used to be, revered and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with a win. But if Mickey Flynn should ever fight me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and so jiggle my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son still had me life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.